American manufacturing is done for. It's kaput. It's no more, at least for now. Maybe things will change over the next couple of years as supposedly these Trump policies will bring manufacturing back to the United States. But we have a severe problem with quality. This is an A.O. Smith water heater. These are water heater part. There's 3 parts to a water heater. There's this part with the valve on it. You got the control there. See the pilot knob. You got this part which heats up the water. It's a very simple contraption. Our A.O. Smith water heater failed after 2 years. Less than 2 years. Because there's a 2-year warranty on these parts. And amazingly, a water heater, these things used to last for 20 years easily with no problems. Even if you didn't, flush them out and do all the correct maintenance. But now, A.O. Smith, an American manufacturer that manufactured this simple contraption, the 2 out of the 3 parts. Well, there's only 3 parts. So anyways, they manufactured these parts and they broke down, and they were manufactured in Mexico. They broke down in 2 years. The plumbers said, hey, it's got to be one or more of these parts that's not working. It's a very simple machine. You need to let's order these 2 parts and have them replaced. So I called up A.O. Smith and they sent us the 2 parts that were under warranty. The plumbers put the 2 parts into the water heater, and the water heater still did not work. So called up A.O. Smith again and again and again and again and again. And they refused to send us working, simple parts from their factory, which is which has the capacity to pump out thousands of these things. And these things don't cost very much to make. Come on. These aren't electric cars. This is not cutting edge technology. This is 100-year-old technology. I've got a mini water heater sitting on my kitchen counter. It heats up water immediately, very quickly, to like boiling. It's a very simple contraption. Okay, these 3 water heater parts. So they refused until I threatened to start a social media campaign against them, and also report to China, to the Chinese people, that A.O. Smith didn't know how to manufacture a water heater. Not that they would ever have a market in China, because I'm sure that there are water heaters made in China at a much cheaper price that work for a lot longer than the 2 years that this stupid A.O. Smith water heater lasted for. But I think that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and they finally sent us yet another set of parts. And finally, after months, literally probably about 2 or 3 months without hot water, probably about 3 months, we finally got our water heater to work. It cost us, I don't know, something close to $1,000 just to get it replaced, get these 2 parts replaced in the water heater. And there was a lot of scamming going on amongst the plumbers. They, at first they couldn't. The first plumber refused to tell us that we could get the parts from A.O. Smith and have them installed, rather than having to buy the parts at like $1,000 markup from the plumber themselves. So after we talked and waited, and if you're dealing with scammers, or not scammers, that's not all that they do. But if you're dealing with plumbers, electricians, or people who can car repairmen, sometimes you just gotta wait. You just have to wait them out. And we waited and waited, and finally they just said, "Hey, okay, look, you don't have to buy the parts from us. You can get the parts probably for free from A.O. Smith themselves." And yes, of course, They saw when the parts were made. Of course, you could get the part, but we didn't understand how the system worked. We just assumed that the plumbers were going to be honest with us, and I should have learned over years and years and years of being scammed by contractors and plumbers and electricians and so on and so forth, that there are a lot of scammers out there. Anyways, so the point is, American manufacturing is done not because it costs too much to manufacture in North America, in the United States, or in Mexico, but because we just can't get things done right in the United States anymore. This is not the first time this has happened. It just happens all the time in America now. We get scammed. We can't get the thing done right. People can't do simple jobs like installing a toilet. We have a toilet that's not sealed to the floor. This is the second time that plumbers have come over to our house and installed the toilet and refused to seal it for us. So now we have to go find someone else to seal the toilet. There's a bunch of scammers, especially if you're Chinese, especially if you're Asian. It's a good excuse to scam people. They don't belong here. They're spies. I've had neighbors call us spies. So anyways, the whole American mentality, and of course, all the education system is trash in the United States. The one thing that you should be able to learn by going to school is how do you follow instructions. And the thing that you find out in school is, rather than having to follow instructions and do work, it's easier just to sort of play the system, get what you need, get your high school diploma, get your just hang out at school, have fun. If you just hang around long enough and don't get expelled, you'll get your degree, you'll get your lunch, you'll get your social time, you'll get your girlfriend, your boyfriend, you'll get everything that you need, and you won't have to do much. And this is what people have learned in high school and in college. Unless you're Asian, you can get into college real easy in the United States, because you don't have to compete against the Asians to get into college. And don't tell me that the affirmative action doesn't, there's no affirmative action anymore. Of course, there's still affirmative action. As soon as they find out your race, they look at your name, they look at the box that you check off, and they don't have a quota anymore, but there's a silent quota of, well, let's try to keep as many Asians out and get as many of the other people in as possible. Look at the case of Stanley Go. You can look him up. He was rejected by all the UC schools, even though he was a perfect student. He should have been able to get in Princeton, Harvard, all those places easily. He was essentially a Google level coder who was doing social justice work with his coding skills, and he was making these apps during COVID to help people through their COVID issues and so on and so forth. And he couldn't get into any school that he applied to, except for one. And they were not all Ivy League schools. There were some lower level schools. The UC, he applied to all these UC schools. They all rejected him, even though affirmative action is illegal in California in college admissions. Nobody follows the law. Everyone ignores the law because we have to keep Asians out. Now, that's not the point of this video. The result of keeping the Asians out is that you have reduced the quality of your graduates, because basically, not because Asians are superior in school, but the way they're keeping the Asians out is that you're raising the levels, the standards for the Asians, and lowering the standards for everyone else to just ridiculous degrees. So our education system is, I think the whole world knows now that it's a joke. You got 23 Baltimore schools that don't have a single student that's on their grade level for mathematics. Okay, mathematics is something that kids have almost an innate sense of. Even like lower level animals, lower species have a sense of numbers. And they may not be able to speak. They don't have language, but they have a sense of numbers. So what I'm saying is that our education level, the laws against clean energy in the United States over the past 10, 15 years have really stunted manufacturing, because because a lot of the new manufacturing has been in clean energy. Well, Obama, Trump, Biden, they all put massive tariffs on clean energy, well, the whole entire clean energy supply chain. Meanwhile, they did not allow a clean energy supply chain to be developed in the United States. Certainly, Obama and Biden did not want any polysilicon mines in the United States. That's the beginning of the clean energy supply chain. So China knew early on, if you want to develop clean energy, if you want to develop solar power, if you want to have a clean energy supply chain, you have to mine sand, right? It's not coal. We're not talking about sending thousands of people into coal mines to get black lung disease, right? You're talking about mining sand to refine into silicon and to put into ovens to make polysilicon so that you can make solar panels. So our country has refused to mine sand and therefore prevented an entire clean energy supply chain, and also helped to slow down the development of new energy cars like Teslas. I mean, we have one electric car company in the United States. China's got like hundreds of them. We've got one viable one. They've got so many electric car companies in China that the government is actively trying to shut down electric car companies in China. They're saying we got too many of them. The competition is too vicious. The prices are too low. We're causing deflation in the economy. Things are just getting cheaper and cheaper. The price wars on these electric cars in China is insane. They're buying electric cars for like $5,000 in China. In the United States, we got to pay like $40,000. It's ridiculous. And that's and the subsidies are helpful for the consumer. But the problem is that America has been obsessed with demand side economics. What they want to do is they want to give people a bunch of free money to go buy stuff. Well, what does that do? That increases the prices of stuff without necessarily increasing the supply. Because if there's only 2 or 3 car companies that make electric cars, really, and they figure out that, the government's paying out money to the consumers to buy electric cars, they're like, well, we don't really have to lower our prices. Let's just exploit this massive profit margin. And the worst effect of this was in colleges, where the price of colleges has grown. Let's see, I paid $410 the first semester of my college, and so now it's like what, $11,000 or $12,000 a semester? I don't know. Anyways, it's increased by the tens, 10, 20, 30, who knows how much. Well, this is in part as a result of, let's give people free money that they don't have to pay back to go to college. And so the colleges realize this. They said, we can raise the tuition. Our students are getting free money, except for those who are not allowed to get free money. Let's keep raising the tuition until the government stops paying for the full. What the government will pay for whatever the tuition is, and charge 0% or 1% or 2%, whatever, a low interest rate. The government won't even require people to pay the money back. We'll just keep raising the prices of tuition and fees until the system breaks, and then we'll maybe consider lowering the tuition. Well, this is the problem with demand side economics. So supply side economics got a bad name in the 1980s when I believe it was David Stockman who called George Bush Sr.'s idea of supply side economics voodoo economics. They called it trickle down economics, all these things. But the thing is, if you do supply side economics right, and the Chinese Communist Party, yeah, they're a bunch of communists. They're a bunch of bad people. A lot of them are. I'm not going to say everybody in the Communist Party is bad, because, It's kind of in China. It's kind of like having a AAA card. To join the Communist Party. You get one because you're pretty okay at what you do. You're a good doctor. Hey, want to join the Communist Party? You get a free trip to Mao's tomb every 5 years. Yeah, sure, I'll join the Communist Party. Whatever. So the point is this. Supply side economics is about increasing the supply of stuff so it becomes cheaper, more available, and done right, and creating and also create competition. And this is what the Chinese government has done. This is what the United States refuses to do. We need to raise the number of educated people, increase the number of engineers in the United States. That's the supply. It will create more supply when you have those engineers. We're having to import or bring in tens of thousands of engineers every year from outside of the United States because we can't allow Asians to become engineers in the United States, at least at a fair rate, in a fair way, in a way that will allow all the Asians who are qualified to become engineers. We have to cut the supply by 50, 80, 90% of the Asians. So yeah, start with supplying engineers. Start with, trying to supply clean energy. Energy is a basis of manufacturing. So we are starting to supply massive amounts of energy for AI, but we don't need AI. The utility companies and the high tech companies are planning just hundreds of gigawatts. Each gigawatt is like a power plant. Hundreds of gigawatts of energy production so that they can supply their AI, their AI servers. It doesn't really make our lives better. Increase the supply of hospitals and doctors. There's a severe doctor shortage. Again, they're constricting the supply of doctors by rejecting qualified candidates from attending medical school, and passing on people that aren't qualified to be doctors. This is one of the reasons why it costs so much to go see the doctor now, because we've restricted the supply of doctors. Same with housing. So I'm going to get off this. Manufacturing is dead in the United States for now. Let's see what happens over the next couple of years. The main thing, as far as hunger is concerned, is what will America do now that the world doesn't need us? Will we start causing more problems as we did throughout most of our history, especially after World War II, in creating havoc and war throughout the world and creating hunger? You see that hunger is mostly caused by war these days. So will America be the source of extreme famine as it was in Syria, when Obama and Russia were bombing Syria for years, causing extreme famine and killing thousands, tens of thousands of people? Will America go back to that when it realizes that the world doesn't need us because we can't manufacture crap and our technology is getting to be sort of, A- level, soon to be B level in the world?